You've arrived. The past welcomes you once again. When we hear the word pirate, our minds usually leap straight to adventure. A fearless rogue with a sword flashing in the sun, a parrot squawking on his shoulder, and a treasure map tucked into his pocket. A life of endless freedom, hidden islands, and glittering chests of gold. But the truth was far less glamorous. The so-called golden age of piracy in the early 1700s was not about freedom or riches for most. It was about survival. For countless men, turning pirate was a desperate escape from the misery of merchant ships and the king's navy, where conditions were brutal and pay was meager. Life aboard a pirate ship was often monotonous, dangerous, and filled with hunger, sickness, and fear, broken only by sudden, violent bursts of battle. And yet, in this harsh world, pirates built something surprising: their own kind of democracy. Crews voted for their captains, shared food equally, and made decisions together in ways that most ordinary people of their time could only dream of. So tonight, we'll leave behind the myths of Hollywood and step aboard a crowded, creaking ship of the early 18th century. We'll explore what they ate, how they lived, and why so many chose the black flag despite the dangers. But before we set sail, I'd love it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories like this one, and it means a lot. And I'm always curious, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let the noise of the modern world drift away. Picture the endless sea stretching to the horizon, the smell of salt in the air, and the ropes creaking overhead. Our story does not begin with a legendary pirate. It begins with you, an ordinary sailor in your early 20s, trapped on a damp wooden ship with the vast, unpredictable ocean all around you.
It is 2 hours before dawn and you're already exhausted. You were woken an hour ago, not by a gentle shake, but by the sharp bark of the boatswain, the senior sailor in charge of the deck crew. Your hands are raw, blistered, and healed and blistered again from hauling on the coarse, salt-stiffened ropes that control the massive sails above. The air is cold and heavy with salt spray that never seems to dry, killing you to the bone. Every muscle in your back and shoulders aches from the relentless work of the previous day and the day before that and every day for the past 6 months since you left port in Bristol. This is your life on a merchant vessel in the year 1716. It is not a life of adventure. It is a life of unending, back-breaking labour. You and the few dozen other men on board are a tiny human island in an endless ocean, and your work never stops. You are constantly adjusting the rigging, climbing high into the masts on swaying ropes to furl or unfurl sails with nothing but 100 feet of empty air and churning sea below you. You work the pumps to expel the foul, stagnant bilgage water that constantly seeps into the hull. You scrub the decks, you mend the sails, you tar the ropes. You do this day in and day out in blistering sun and freezing rain. For this ceaseless labour, you are paid a pittance, and even that payment is not guaranteed. As a sailor on a merchant ship, you're not paid your wages until the voyage is completely over. If the ship sinks, you get nothing. If you die of disease or accident halfway through the journey, your family back home gets nothing. And if you make it all the way back to port, the captain, a man with absolute authority, can easily cheat you. A captain can invent fines for supposed infractions, a misplaced tool, a moment of perceived laziness, and deduct them from your hard-earned wages. You've seen it happen on every voyage. Men who worked for a year straight, only to end up with a few shillings in their pocket, just enough to get drunk for a night before signing onto another ship to do it all over again. The food is worse than the pay. Your daily ration is a biscuit called hardtack, which is little more than flour, water, and salt baked into a cracker as hard as a piece of wood. It has to be soaked in water or beer just to be chewed, and it is almost always infested with weevils, small black beetles that lived in the barrels of flour. The meat is salted beef or pork stored for months in barrels, so saturated with salt that it has to be scraped and soaked for hours before it can be choked down. The water is the worst of all, stored in wooden casks where it quickly becomes stagnant, green and slimy. This diet of salt and starch with no fresh fruit or vegetables leads inevitably to scurvy. You have seen men suffer from it. You have seen their gums bleed, their teeth fall out, their old wounds reopen, their minds grow confused, all from the lack of simple nourishment. And looming over all this hardship is the constant threat of discipline. The captain of a merchant ship is a king in his floating kingdom. His word is law, and his primary tool of enforcement is the whip. The catteen tails, a whip with multiple knotted lashes, can turn a man's back into a ruin of bleeding flesh for the smallest offence. Arguing with an officer, being too slow to climb the rigging, or even just being disliked by the captain, is enough to warrant a flogging. There is no trial, no appeal, just a sharp whistle of the lash and the brutal searing pain. You know you are lucky in a way. You chose this life. Many sailors in the King's Royal Navy did not. They were pressed into service, kidnapped from the streets of a port town or taken from another ship at sea and forced to serve. In the Navy, the discipline is even harsher, the work just as hard. And you have the constant added terror of being killed in a naval battle, your world exploding in a shower of cannonballs and wooden splinters. So this is your world, a world of constant work, terrible food, stolen wages, and arbitrary, brutal punishment. Your future holds nothing more than an endless cycle of these miserable voyages until the sea or sickness finally claims you. Piracy to you is not a romantic notion. It is a whisper, a rumour, a story told by other sailors in hushed tones. It's a dangerous path, yes, but it is a different one. One grey morning, as you're squinting at the horizon, you see it. A strange sail. A fast-moving ship closing on your vessel with an unnerving speed. It flies no colours you recognise. As it draws closer, the men around you begin to murmur, their faces pale with fear. They know what this might be. But for you, buried beneath the fear, a different feeling begins to stir. A small, dangerous spark of something else entirely. The ship grows larger, slicing through the waves with the purpose your own vessel lacks. It's a sloop, a smaller, faster, and more nimble ship than your bulky merchantman. You notice it's crowded with men, far more than would be needed for a simple trading voyage. The captain of your ship is shouting orders, his voice tight with fear. The men around you move with a panicked energy. Then the moment of truth arrives. A puff of white smoke blossoms from the side of the approaching sloop. A second later, you hear the deep boom of a cannon, and a cannonball skips across the water, just in front of your ship's bow. This is a warning shot, a clear and universal signal on the high seas that means, stop your vessel, or the next shot will not be a warning. Your captain is no fool. He knows his ship is slower, his crew is smaller, and his few small cannons are no match for the firepower of a dedicated pirate vessel. To fight would be suicide. His cargo is insured by wealthy men in London. His life is not. He gives the orders to strike the colours, to lower your ship's flag in a sign of surrender. The tension on deck turns from panic to a kind of grim, fearful resignation. The pirate's loop skillfully manoeuvres alongside, and with a crash of grappling hooks and rope, the two ships are bound together. And then they are aboard. They spill over the railing, not as a disorganised mob, but as a confident, organised team. You see now that they are sailors just like you. Their faces are weathered by the same sun and sea. Their hands bear the same calluses from the ropes. But there is a difference. They move with an air of freedom and confidence you have never seen on a merchant ship. They are well armed, each man carrying a pistol tucked into his belt and a sword at his side. They quickly disarm your ship's officers and gather your crew on the main deck. You stand there, heart pounding, expecting the worst. But there is no immediate violence. Instead, a man steps forward who is clearly in charge, though he isn't the captain. This is the quartermaster. On a pirate ship, he was the second in command. The man who represented the crew's interests, handled discipline, and was responsible for dividing any plunder. He was often more powerful than the captain in day-to-day life. His voice is calm and direct. He tells your crew that they have no interest in harming any ordinary sailor. They're here for the cargo and for anyone who wishes to join their company. He lays out the offer. You can stay with your captain, continue your voyage, and face the same life of misery and poverty you've always known. Or you can leave it all behind. You can join them. You can become one of them. A free man entitled to an equal share of every prize they take. You look at the faces of your crewmates. For most, fear wins out. They have families, homes, and a deep abiding fear of the hangman's noose. But you see a few others, men like you, with little to lose and no future to look forward to. And you can see the same spark in their eyes that you feel in your own chest. The choice you realise is truly yours. The pirates don't want to force you. They have escaped tyranny themselves. They have no interest in commanding a crew of unwilling captives. They want volunteers, brothers who will willingly fight alongside them. So you weigh your life in that moment. On one side, a guaranteed future of back-breaking work, spoiled food, and the sting of the whip, all for wages you might never see. On the other, the promise of plunder, of freedom, of respect. It is the choice between a long, slow misery and a life that will likely be short, but at least will be your own. You and two other sailors step forward. The quartermaster grins. He gestures for you to cross over to the pirate ship. As you climb over the railing, leaving your old vessel and your old life behind. One of the pirates hands you a tin mug filled with a cloudy alcoholic liquid. It is grog, a simple drink of watered-down rum, sometimes mixed with lime or sugar. It is the lifeblood of sailors everywhere. But this mug tastes different. It tastes of freedom. Your old ship, now poorer by a few crewmen and a hold full of cargo, detaches and slowly sails away. You stand on the deck of a pirate vessel, surrounded by the so-called enemies of all mankind. You are now one of them. The initial relief begins to fade, replaced by a new pressing reality. You have joined their society, but you do not yet know its laws. You stand on the deck of your new ship, the taste of grog still on your lips. The initial wave of adrenaline and relief has passed, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. You have escaped the tyranny of your old captain. But what have you joined? How can a ship full of men who have rejected all authority possibly function without tearing itself apart? The answer comes a short while later. The quartermaster, the man who invited you aboard, gathers you and the other new recruits. He unrolls a sheet of parchment, its edges worn from use. This, he explains, is the foundation of their society. These are the ship's Articles of Agreement, more famously known as the Pirate Code. You learn immediately that this is not a set of rules imposed from above. On this ship, there is no absolute king. Before any voyage, the entire crew gathers together. They debate, they argue, and they vote on every single rule written on this page. Every man from the captain down to you, the newest recruit, has an equal say. The captain is elected and can be removed from command by a majority vote if the crew is not satisfied with his leadership. You have just joined not merely a ship's crew, but a floating democratic republic. It's a concept so radical, so contrary to the world, that it takes a moment to fully grasp. The quartermaster begins to read some of the key articles aloud, ensuring you understand the contract you're about to sign. First and most important, every man has an equal vote in the affairs of the moment. This means any major decision whether to attack a ship, where to sail next, or what punishments to hand out is decided by the crew as a whole. Second, no prey, no pay. You will receive no wages. Your payment is a fair share of whatever is plundered. The articles specify exactly how the loot will be divided. The captain might receive 2 full shares, the quartermaster perhaps 1.5. Skilled men like the ship surgeon or carpenter might also get a slightly larger portion. But you as a regular sailor are entitled to 1 full share. No deductions, no tricks. You will get exactly what you are owed every single time. Third, there are rules of conduct. Any quarrel between 2 men must be settled on shore with pistols or swords to prevent disruptive fighting on the crowded ship. There are to be no women allowed on board. Another rule designed to prevent jealousy and conflict among the crew, and every man is expected to keep his pistols and sword clean and ready for action at all times. Fourth, lights out at 8 o'clock. You learn this isn't a strict bedtime, it's a critical fire safety rule. After 8 p.m, there are to be no open flames, from candles or lamps for gambling or drinking. On a wooden ship filled with barrels of gunpowder and tread ropes, a single careless flame could doom everyone. And then comes the most surprising article of all, a system of compensation for injuries sustained in battle. This is their version of insurance. A man who loses his right arm in a fight might be awarded 600 pieces of 8, the common Spanish silver dollar that was the main currency of the seas. The loss of a leg might be worth 500 pieces of 8, and I 100. This money was paid out from the ship's treasury before the rest of the plunder was divided. It was a promise that your brothers would take care of you, a level of care and respect unimaginable on the merchant ship you just left. After reading the articles, the quartermaster lays the parchment on the lid of a barrel. He looks at you and the other new men. This is the final step. To join the Brotherhood, you must sign. You take the offered quill, dip it in ink and make your mark on the document. By doing this, you are entering into a sacred contract. You are agreeing to live by these rules, to fight for your brothers, and to accept the severe punishments for breaking your oath. You have now formally sworn your allegiance. You're a full member of the crew with a right to a vote and a right to a share of any prize. You're part of a society of outlaws governed by its own surprisingly fair and orderly laws. But a society is more than just its rules. It is also the physical space it occupies. With the formalities over, you take your first proper look around, seeing the ship not as a captive anymore, but as a resident. This is your home now. The very same sloop that ran down your old vessel with such ease. You realise now why it's chosen. It's not a massive warship, but it's lean and fast. A captured merchant vessel that has been transformed from a simple workhorse into a predator of the sea lanes. Your new crew has already made modifications. You see more cannons on deck than a merchant ship would ever carry, their black iron muzzles staring out from newly cut gun ports. The decks have been cleared of any unnecessary clutter to make more room for fighting. This vessel has been hardened. You walk the main deck, taking in the controlled chaos. There are thick coils of rope neatly tied down. There are pyramids of iron cannonballs secured with netting. You see spare spars, the long wooden poles used to hold the sails, lashed to the sides of the ship, ready to replace any that might be broken in a storm or a battle. You close your eyes for a moment to simply listen. You hear the constant deep groan of the ship's timbers, like an old man's sigh. You hear the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull, a sound that will be with you day and night. Above, you hear the sharp snap of the canvas sails as they catch the wind, and the high, lonely cry of a seabird. It is a symphony of wood, wind, and water. The smells are just as strong. The clean, sharp scent of the salt spray mixed with the pungent, almost medicinal smell of the tar used to waterproof the ship's wooden ropes. But the real heart of the ship, you soon discover, is below deck. As you climb down the ladder into the gloom, a thick, warm and heavy air envelops you. This is the 'tween deck, the main living quarters. There are no private cabins here, no walls, no doors. This single low-ceiling space is where you and 80 other men will sleep. You see rows upon rows of hammocks, lengths of canvas slung from the overhead beams. They are hung so close together that you can easily reach out and touch the man next to you. You learn that hammocks were a brilliant innovation. Pirates and sailors adopted from the native peoples of the Americas. Unlike a fixed bunk or a simple mattress on the floor, a hammock sways with the constant rolling motion of the ship, cradling you and preventing you from being thrown to the wet floor during rough seas. The air down here is a complex mixture of smells. It smells of unwashed bodies, of stale rum, of damp wool and something else. A foul, sour smell coming from below. This, you're told, is the BGE. The BGE is the very bottom of the ship's hull, a dark, inaccessible space where all the foul water collects. Seawater that leaks through the planks, spilled food and drink, and all other forms of waste gather down there, sloshing back and forth into a putrid soup. Its stomach-turning smells a constant presence, a scent that permeates the very wood of the ship. It is the defining smell of your new home. You realise that on this vessel there is no such thing as privacy. You will eat, work, and sleep within arm's reach of 80 to 100 other men. You now understand why the ship's articles had such strict rules against fighting on board. In such a crowded and intimate space, small disagreements could easily boil over into dangerous violence if not properly managed. You find an empty space between two cannons and are shown how to sling your own hammock. As you lie back in the gently swaying canvas, you listen to the symphony of the ship's sounds, the creaking wood, the snoring men, the distant waves. You're surrounded by this new family. You know the rules. You know the layout of your new home. But what do you actually do all day? You wake to the gentle rocking of your hammock. It's dark, but you can hear the sounds of men stirring around you. Your first full day as a pirate is about to begin. The question that formed in your mind as you fell asleep, what do you actually do all day, is about to be answered. You quickly learn that a pirate's life is not one of lazy leisure waiting for a prize to appear. A pirate ship is a complex machine and it demands constant attention. Your day and your entire existence at sea is governed by the watch system. The crew is divided into 2 halves or watches. Your half is on duty for a 4-hour shift, then off duty for the next 4 hours in a relentless cycle that repeats all day and all night. There is no weekend, no day off. There is only the watch. During your time on watch, the work is familiar yet different. The most important task is, of course, sailing the ship. You and your watchmates are constantly trimming the sails, pulling on ropes to adjust their angle to catch the wind in the most efficient way possible. It's a delicate art, a constant conversation between the crew, the sails and the wind. But most of the work is maintenance. Endless, repetitive, but vital maintenance. You spend hours sitting on the deck with a mallet and a chisel performing a task called caulking. This means hammering sticky tarred rope fibres called oakum into the seams between the wooden planks of the deck and hull. It's a slow, tedious job, but it's what keeps the ship from taking on water and sinking. Other days you are sent aloft with a bucket of tar to coat the rigging, protecting the thick ropes from being destroyed by the relentless sun and salt spray. You scrub the decks not just to keep them clean, but to scour away the slippery green algae that grows in the damp sea air. You check the cannons, making sure they are secure, that the mechanisms are clean, and that the gunpowder stores nearby are kept perfectly dry. Sometimes you're assigned lookout duty. You climb the rigging high up to the crow's nest, a small wooden platform at the top of the main mast. From here, you are the eyes of the ship. The view is immense, a 360-degree panorama of nothing but the endless shifting blue of the ocean. Your job is to stare into that emptiness for hours, searching for the one thing that matters, another sail. It is a lonely, hypnotizing task. When your 4-hour watch is finally over, you're relieved by the other half of the crew. But your time off watch is not truly for leisure. This is when you eat your rations. This is when you must find time to sleep, to gather your strength for the next shift, and this is when you perform your own personal maintenance, sharpening your knife, mending a tear in your shirt, or washing your clothes in a bucket of seawater. After 4 hours of hard physical labour, the desire for sleep is often overwhelming. The tasks themselves are nearly identical to the work you did on the merchant ship, and yet everything is different. There is no boat screaming insults at you. There is no officer threatening you with the whip for a minor mistake. The men work together with a quiet efficiency. They know the ship is their own. A well-maintained vessel is a faster vessel, more likely to catch a prize. A clean cannon is a weapon that will fire true when it's needed. You are not working out of fear. You're working for a shared purpose. You are a shareholder in this enterprise, and the work you do directly contributes to your own potential fortune. The mood is lighter. The conversations are freer. You are treated as an equal, a brother. The days begin to bleed into one another, marked only by the changing of the watch and the position of the sun. The rhythm of work, eat, sleep, work becomes your entire world. You realize that the great enemy on these long voyages between prizes is not the Royal Navy, nor is it the storm. It is the vast, soul-crushing boredom of the open sea. As you fall into this routine, you begin to observe the men around you more closely. You see how this society truly functions. You see that the captain is respected and his orders are followed in battle. But in the day-to-day life of the ship, it is the quartermaster that the men listen to. It is the quartermaster who settles disputes, who distributes the rations, who seems to hold the true balance of power. As the weeks pass, you begin to truly understand the answer to the question that has been forming in your mind. How does a ship full of outlaws govern itself? You see now that it is not one man who leads, but two, in a delicate and ingenious balance of power, specifically designed to prevent the kind of tyranny you escaped. First, there is the captain. You notice that he is treated with a certain respect. He is the expert sailor, the master navigator, the man who can read the waves and the stars. His primary job is to guide the ship and to command it in battle. He is in essence the ship's Warrakif. When a potential prize is spotted on the horizon, a change comes over the ship. The democratic, almost casual atmosphere instantly sharpens. In that moment, the captain's authority becomes absolute. His orders are obeyed instantly and without question by every man on board. He decides the angle of attack, when to fire the cannons and when to board. During a chase or a battle, he is the undisputed king of the vessel. This is a practical matter. In the chaos of combat, there is no time for a debate or a vote. The crew puts their trust in his skill to win the prize and keep them all alive. But here is the crucial difference. As soon as the battle is over, his absolute power vanishes. He steps back and once again becomes a man among equals. He is still the captain, but he cannot order a man flogged for a minor insult. He cannot change the destination of the ship on a whim. He cannot even claim the largest portion of the captain's cabin for himself without the crew's agreement. He was elected to his position, and if he proves to be a coward in battle or consistently fails to find prizes, the crew can hold a vote at any time and depose him, electing a new captain in his place. The true power in the day-to-day life of the ship, you learn, belongs to the quartermaster. He is the peace chief. While the captain is the crew's leader, the quartermaster is the crew's advocate. He's the voice of the men, elected to protect their interests and ensure fairness. His responsibilities are vast. He is in charge of the ship's stores, distributing the daily rations of food and water to ensure every man gets his equal share. He is the ship's judge and jury. If you have a dispute with another sailor, you do not take it to the captain. You take it to the quartermaster. He listens to both sides and makes a ruling, and his decision is respected. He also administers all punishments that the crew has voted on according to the articles. So if a man is to be flogged, it is the quartermaster, not the captain, who gives the order, removing that power of personal vengeance from the captain's hands. When a prize is taken, the quartermaster leads the boarding party. He is the one who decides what plunder is to be taken from the captured vessel, and he is the keeper of all that plunder until it can be brought to a safe port and divided. He ensures that every coin, every bolt of cloth, every barrel of wine is accounted for and shared out exactly as the articles prescribe. You now see the genius of this system. It is a separation of powers born from the bitter experience of men who'd been oppressed. They gave one man, the captain, the power to lead them in war, but they gave another man, the quartermaster, the power to protect them from that same leader in times of peace. It was a system of checks and balances that ensured no single man could ever hold absolute power over the crew again. It was a government for the people by the people on a floating wooden republic of outlaws. You see this system in action every day as the quartermaster moves through the ship, settling a card game dispute here, distributing the daily ration of grog there. The system works because it is built on fairness. Everyone gets their share. But as you receive your daily portion of salted beef and hard attack, a new thought comes to mind. What exactly is that share? The question of what you eat and drink is one of the most fundamental parts of your new life. You quickly learn that the standard rations on a pirate ship are at first disappointingly similar to the grim menu of the merchant vessel you so gladly left behind. The foundation of your diet is still the hard tack, the rock-hard flour and water biscuit likely dotted with the black specks of weevils. The main source of protein is still salted meat, either beef or pork, that has been cured in barrels of brine for so long that it is tough, chewy, and overwhelmingly salty. This is supplemented by sacks of dried peas, beans, or oatmeal. It is a diet of preservation designed to last for months in the damp hold of a ship, not for pleasure. Your drink is also much the same. Water stored in casks quickly goes foul, so alcohol is essential. The daily ration of grog, the mix of rum and water, is a treasured ritual, a moment of warmth and cheer in a long day. It makes the stale water more palatable, and provides a brief escape from the monotony of life at sea. But here is where you discover the pirates' advantage. Unlike a merchant ship which must sail from port A to port B on a strict schedule, a pirate vessel is master of its own time. Your captain is not in a hurry to deliver cargo. This gives you the freedom to supplement your diet in ways a merchant sailor could only dream of. If the ship is running low on supplies, you might stop at a small uninhabited island. The crew will go ashore in long boats, armed not for battle, but for hunting. You spend the day tracking wild pigs or goats through the jungle, a welcome relief from the confines of the ship. The animals are brought back and the crew builds a fire on the beach, roasting the fresh meat over a wooden grill called a boucan. The taste of fresh, unsalted meat is a luxury so profound it feels like a feast for a king. At sea, you fish. Men will trail lines from the stern of the ship, hoping to catch tuna or other large fish to be shared among the crew. But the most prized catch of all is the giant sea turtle. Turtles were plentiful in the Caribbean, easy to catch while they slept on the surface of the water, and they were an ideal source of food. A single large turtle could feed the entire crew, and remarkably they could be kept alive on their backs on the deck for weeks. This is the pirates' way, living off the sea and the land, taking what they could find. But the greatest feast, the moments of true indulgence, came after a successful capture. When you board a captured merchant ship, the first prize is not always the captain's strongbox, it is often his pantry. While your diet is one of bland survival, a merchant captain D. Your crew descends upon his private stores with joyous cries. You might find barrels of fine French wine or Spanish brandy, sacks of soft white flour for baking bread, and precious casks of sugar. You might find spices that are worth a fortune, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. Best of all, you might find live chickens clucking in wooden coops, or even a pig or a cow brought along for the captain's table. That night your ship becomes a floating banquet hall. The cook, who is usually just another sailor with a bit of skill over a fire, becomes the most important man on board. This smell of roasting meat fills the air. You eat freshly baked bread instead of weevil-filled biscuits. You drink stolen wine from tin mugs, singing sea shanties with your brothers. For a few hours, you live better than any king. This is the reward. This is the merry life you signed up for. You're full for the first time in what feels like years. The ship is well stocked, and the threat of scurvy has been pushed away by fresh food. But this bounty cannot protect you from everything. A slip of a knife while working the rigging, a splintered bone from a fall or a sudden raging fever are constant dangers. The question of what happens when you are seriously hurt or fall ill is a heavy one. In the world you left behind, a sick sailor was often seen as a useless burden. Here among pirates, you learn that the approach is different, born from a mix of brutal necessity and surprising compassion. Most pirate ships did not have a professionally trained doctor. A surgeon was a highly valued prize, and if one was captured on a merchant or naval vessel, he was considered one of an attack's most valuable assets. The pirate crew would do everything they could to persuade him to join them, offering him a full share of the plunder and promising him good treatment. A skilled surgeon was one of the very few men a pirate crew might actually force into service, as his knowledge was a matter of life and death for everyone. But if no doctor could be found, the role of ship's surgeon fell to whichever crewman had the most relevant skills. In many cases this was the ship's carpenter. This might seem strange, but the logic was grimly practical. The most common major surgery at sea was amputation, and no one on board was better with a saw. The carpenter knew his tools. He knew how to make a clean, swift cut, and he was not squeamish about it. On other ships the role might fall to the cook, for he was the man most skilled with knives. The ship's medical kit was usually a captured surgeon's chest, itself a form of treasure. Inside you would find the tools of the trade, saws for bone, sharp knives for flesh, probes for exploring wounds, and forceps for pulling out musk balls. The medicines were a mix of the effective and the dangerous. The chest would contain laudanum, which is an opiate, a powerful painkiller made from opium that could dull the senses during surgery. It might also contain mercury, which was a common but toxic treatment for venereal diseases, and a variety of dried herbs and powders for treating fevers and infections. After a battle, the main deck could be transformed into a makeshift operating theatre. Wounded men would be laid out, and the surgeon would get to work. His methods were direct and brutal. A deep cut from a sword would be stitched shut with a simple needle and thread. To stop bleeding and prevent infection in a world without antibiotics, the surgeon would perform a cauterization, sealing the wound by applying a red-hot piece of iron or a dollop of hot tar directly to the flesh. The smell of burning skin and the screams of the patient were a common aftermath to any fight. For a limb shattered by a cannonball or a musket shot, there was usually only one option: amputation. To remove the ruined arm or leg was the only way to prevent gangrene, a deadly infection that was always fatal. You would be given a large dose of rum or laudanum to numb the pain, and a leather strap to bite down on to keep from biting through your own tongue. Your crewmates would hold you down, and the carpenter surgeon would work as quickly as he could. The survival rate for such procedures was low, but it was better than the certain death of infection. Common sicknesses like fevers and dysentery could sweep through the crowded, unsanitary ship with terrifying speed. And scurvy, the disease caused by a lack of vitamin C, was a constant threat on long voyages without fresh fruit. For this silent majority, the golden age of piracy was not a fight to the death, but a single wild chapter in an otherwise ordinary life. And what of the pirate's ultimate dream, the quiet retirement with a fabulous fortune? This is the stuff of legend, and for good reason. It was almost impossible to achieve. The pirate ethos of love for today meant very few ever managed to save a fortune. The legends of pirates like Henry Every, who supposedly vanished with his treasure to live as a king in a secret paradise, are likely just stories that fuel the dreams of other sailors. So these were the fates that awaited them. A swift death in battle, the public shame of the gallows, the lonely exile of marooning, the quiet escape of the pardon, or the nearly impossible dream of a legendary retirement. With the historical pirates gone from the seas, their reality began to fade. The memory of the brutal working conditions, the monotonous diet, and the constant fear was replaced by something far more romantic and enduring. The transformation from history into legend began almost immediately, thanks, in large part, to one incredibly popular book. In 1724, while some of the last pirates were still being hunted, a book was published in London called A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. It was written under the name Captain Charles Johnson, though his true identity remains a mystery to this day. The book was an instant sensation. It was part history, containing surprisingly accurate details about pirate articles, ships, and daily life, likely gathered from interviews with sailors and reports from trials, but it was also part sensationalized drama. Johnson was a brilliant storyteller, and he took the known facts about pirates like Blackbeard, Calico, Jack Rackham, and the famous female pirates Anne Bonny and Mary Read, and he crafted them into compelling, larger-than-life characters. He solidified their legends, creating the definitive versions of their stories that we still draw from today. This book was the first crucial step. It organized the chaotic history of piracy into a collection of thrilling biographies. For over a century, this was how the world saw pirates as brutal but fascinating historical figures. Then, in the late 19th century, a second, even more influential author would take the torch. The Scottish writer Robert Louis Stevenson, looking for an adventure story to write for his stepson, drew upon the legends from Johnson's book and created his masterpiece Treasure Island, published in 1883. This novel, more than any other work, is responsible for creating the modern myth of the pirate. Stevenson took the single, rare historical case of Captain Kidd burying his treasure and made it the central goal of all piracy. The idea of a secret map where X marks the spot is a pure invention of Treasure Island. His most brilliant creation was the character of Long John Silver, the charismatic one-legged ship's cook with a parrot named Captain Flint on his shoulder. Long John Silver became the archetype for every fictional pirate that would follow. He cemented the idea of the charming, friendly but treacherous pirate rogue, the talking parrot, the treasure map, the moral ambiguity. All of these classic tropes came from this one book. The final step in the transformation came in the 20th century with the rise of cinema. Hollywood took the romantic adventure of Treasure Island and made it visual. Actors like Errol Flynn in the 1930s and 40s created the image of the swashbuckler, the handsome acrobatic hero who fights with a sword, swings on ropes, and always wins the heart of a beautiful lady. In these films, pirates were no longer dangerous outlaws. They were dashing heroes. This brings us to the pirate we know today, a direct descendant of Long John Silver and Errol Flynn, Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean films. He is the complete package of the romantic myth, charming, witty, and a master swordsman living a life of pure freedom and adventure. And so the transformation is complete. the historical reality of the desperate, often miserable sailor who chose a short, brutal life out of a lack of better options, has been replaced by the fictional ideal of the free-spirited adventurer. The real pirates may have only ruled the seas for a brief and violent generation, but their legend, the powerful story of ultimate freedom, rebellion, and a life without rules, has proven to be immortal. It is a story we continue to tell ourselves, perhaps because some small part of us still longs for a world with a blank space on the map marked with an X. Thank you for joining me on this long journey tonight. From the harsh realities of a sailor's life to the birth of a timeless legend, our voyage through history is now at an end. I hope you'll return as we continue to explore the stories found in the shadows of the past. I wish you a calm and peaceful night.